with a buzzing respirator beside her. In one night, he went from a lively big boy to a living dead hanging by a thread. All she could do was open her mouth in pain, but no sound came out. It turned out that Robin had an incurable spinal condition, leaving him paralyzed. He couldn't breathe alone. A ventilator could only sustain him for 3 months. The news struck like lightning. Robin's life seemed to be on a countdown, a fact that repeatedly struck Anne's fragile heart, yet she didn't break down. Instead, she remained surprisingly calm, refusing to believe that her husband was sentenced to death. Wishing to give her child a complete family urged her to give up, but Robin was still a precious life, an irreplaceable love in her heart. Soon their son was born, and Anne smiled like sunshine as she brought the baby to Robin in hopes of igniting his will to life. However, when she gently placed the child beside Robin, he lacked the courage to look at the baby. His despair made him realize that he would never see his child growing up healthy. He needed better treatment. Anne decided to take Robin back to England, but for him, it was just changing to a different spot to lie down. The hospital was crowded with patients like Robin, and the buzzing of respirators became their common life soundtrack. But the change of environment only made Robin feel like he was burdening Anne even more. No matter how much time he outlived the doctor's estimates, they could never escape the cold atmosphere. How could he give her happiness? This passed, her condition didn't improve, and felt utterly hopeless. Subtitles. She even went so far as to ask the doctor to intervene and prevent Anne from visiting in an attempt to refuse her visits. Anne was aware that Robin had not yet come to terms with reality, but he still wished to uphold his dignity. Times Earl, she sent her brother to visit, only to hear Robin wanted to give up. But how could Anne back down easily? She would never surrender, even if it meant wagering her life. Luckily, with advanced medical equipment, Robin slowly learned to swallow. If all went well, they could remove the tracheal balloon. Even though he heard about improvements, it still didn't ignite his will to live. She wished to pull out the tube. Though it would be painful for a few minutes, it could bring eternal peace. To cheer Robin up, Anne brought their son to the hospital every day, but Robin never dared to look at him. Having attachments would only add to his pain. Robin longed to end his life. Life's blows and the cruelty of the illness constantly tore at Anne's heart, yet she remained strong in front of her husband. Anne sought out a highly respected priest, hoping to cleanse Robin's darkened spirit, but how could she even believe in divine intervention? One morning, Robin suddenly realized he could move his previously unresponsive hands and pulled out the breathing tube. He sat up slowly, inhaling the long-lost fresh air, but all of this was just the product of his dreams. Anne remained by his side and desperately told him to leave, for he would only be a burden to her. Faced with such a heavy love, Robin couldn't help but tear up. He loved her deeply, but could no longer offer her a happy future. To accompany Robin through his final days, Anne wanted to bring him home for care. But this substantial risk was opposed by the hospital director unless she could bring a ventilator along. Though that was clearly impossible, however, Anne knew that Robin would only be consumed by negative emotions in the hospital. She decided to spend their $7,000 on an old house in the countryside and learn daily care practices. Her unwavering support for Robin touched the doctors, who had decided to risk termination to secretly help and transfer Robin. However, when they quickly wheeled Robin out of the hospital, they were unfortunately caught by the director. "You don't have my permission. This is the garden, and you have no right to stay here. Of course, you're still my guest. You'll be dead within 2 weeks." For Robin, staying in the hospital meant committing slow suicide. Staring daily at the impenetrable ceiling intensified his desire to leave this world. Finally, with the company of his wife and friends, Robin safely arrived at his future home, immediately feeling the warmth he longed for. Anne's sunny smile and the white clouds in the blue sky were etched in his heart. Even if life was short, he wanted to cherish it. Anne pushed 2 beds together so she could take care of Robin at all times, starting a new chapter in life. She carefully connected the breathing tube and turned on the ventilator. When the ventilator buzzed again, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. See, home is the safest place. To prevent power failure, they even prepared a manual ventilator. Anne brought the son to Robin's side. It was the first time he dared to look at his child. Seeing that innocent little face ignited Robin's will to live. But the upcoming days were not as simple as he had imagined. One day, while watching his son play with the puppy accidentally bumped the plug, and the ventilator stopped working instantly. Luckily, Anne noticed in time, preventing this invisible tragedy. Friends rushed over, and to prevent similar incidents, they installed a bell by Robin's bedside. The little guy just had to nod his head a bit, and Anne would rush to his side.